Like all stories, we've got to have a start, and I'm going to take you back to the end of the 1920s, the Roaring Twenties, and it's party time USA. In fact, millions of Americans were betting their life savings on the stock market that had been steadily climbing for a number of years, in a financial term called FOMO, feeling of missing out. But by late October 1929, in fact Thursday, the 24th of October, Black Thursday, and a few days later, on Tuesday, the 29th of October, Black Tuesday, the stock market saw its biggest crashes in financial history. And within weeks and months, the world was gripped by the worldwide depression. Just to my left, I've got a picture, one of the most iconic pictures of the depression. It's a young mother. As you can see, she's malnourished and her children really upset. This typifies what was going on in rural communities in the USA. Yes, they were getting it bad in the city, but in the rural communities, it was horrendous. Now, this was caused by 1931, some 2,300 Main Street banks, what we call in the UK high street banks, had closed. There was no interbank protection protecting your deposits as it is now. There was nothing like that. As a result, millions of Americans lost their life savings because those bank owners had stuck their greedy, piggy noses in the high-risk investment trough that was the Wall Street Stock Exchange. Many Americans were in a state of desperation, either suffering from malnutrition or even, on some of them, on the points of starvation. There was also natural problems like the Great Dust Bowl that ran from 1933 thereabouts to the late 1930s. It was caused by drought, obviously, but also poor land management. This was made famous by the John Steinbeck novel and later film, The Grapes of Wrath. And I'm introducing The Grapes of Wrath just to show the levels of desperation that Americans faced in the rural communities. So you may ask, what's this got to do with World War II? Well, actually, quite a lot. To understand the United States Army in World War II, we need to go back to the Great Depression. And in late 1932, the USA had elected a brand new Democratic president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, known as FDR. And he got his work cut out, as the terrible economic situation would make him have to go against the individualistic spirit of American people. But he had no choice. And he brought in what we would call today the big state, what he called the New Deal. The New Deal would be in three parts. First, the regulation of the banks, separate the risky Wall Street investment banks from the Main Street banks, where normal Americans could deposit their hard-earned money in safety. Then, a form of social security. Now, we had the dole money in Great Britain during this period. The Americans had nothing. So a form of social security to catch the weakest in society. Then back to work with massive federal projects such as building dams, bridges, roads and many other projects that get people back to work and spending their money. One of these projects was called the Civilian Conservation Corps, or the CCC. Now, Roosevelt, as a state governor, ran in the 20s a smaller version of this, where he got young people to work in the outdoors or doing projects. But this would be on a massive scale. Initially, he recruited 250,000 young American men, single men, between the ages of 18 to 25. Oh, by the way, this is the ideal fighting age. And in fact, he got the United States Army to manage this. And in fact, the Chief of Army Staff, General MacArthur, maybe wasn't too happy about it. And other senior American officers, such as Patton, were involved. But one senior general, or a brigadier general, embraced it. And this was General George C. Marshall, who would be influential in the US Army in the coming years. Over 3 million young Americans would take part in this project, between it starting in 1933 till it ending in 1942 or early 1942. Not only would they work hard in the great outdoors, in the national parks, in things like forestry and fire prevention. In fact, many of the campsites and trails in modern American national parks were actually built by the CCC, and they're actually memorials to these guys there today. So they were also well fed. They took part in extracurricular activities such as canoeing and hiking. They're also educated in English, math and science. Also, they were taught radio procedure, vehicle maintenance and truck driving, all skills useful for a growing army. This programme gave a lot of fit young men a sense of purpose. It also gave the US Army, without going through Congress, tabs on a lot of young men that they may need when the Army expanded. And in fact, a lot of these young men, when volunteering for the US Army in the late 30s and early 40s, would become the core of the NCOs, and some would even be commissioned as officers. And in part 2, we shall look at the US Army in the 1930s and its preparation for war.